Yeah, okay, that's fine. Good evening and welcome to the Planning Application Committee. I'm the Chair of the Committee, Councillor David O'Mahony. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, If the alarm sounds, you'll be directed to the nearest and safest exit by members of the team. Can I introduce to my left members of the committee? We have officers from planning, legal and democratic services next to me. Before we begin this evening's agenda, I'd like to formally welcome our newest member of the Planning Applications Committee, Councillor Dave Hoff. Dave, we're glad you've come to join us. The committee deals with some of the most important and sensitive decisions we make as a council, and your experience and perspective will be genuinely valuable. Welcome aboard. We're also saying goodbye to a colleague who has served in this committee for nearly 4 years, Councillor Liz Noble, who is stepping down due to work commitments. Their contribution, diligence and steady presence have helped shape hundreds of decisions that help our borough and our residents every day. On behalf of the committee, I want to express our sincere thanks for her service and wish them both the best going forward. One more point. Before we proceed, I want to take a brief moment to reaffirm something important. Surrey Heath Borough Council has a clear and unwavering commitment to dignity, respect and equity for our residents, for our officers and for each other as elected members. We have seen an increase in racist and discriminatory behaviour in our streets. This does not reflect who we are as a community and will never be acceptable. As councillors, we set the tone. The public looks to us, not just for decisions, but for leadership and conduct. So let tonight be a reminder that disagreement never requires disrespect, that every resident is entitled to feel safe and valued, and that equality is not an aspiration, but a standard. We will continue to champion those values here in the Chamber, in our wards and across Surrey Heath. Jenny, do we have any absences?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for absence tonight.
Members of the committee, are you happy for me to approve the minutes from the last planning application meeting on the 23rd of October? Members, do you have any declarations of interest other than the group email we all received from Wolf Bond planning for the Castle Cove? Anyone else? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler, not Helen Whitcroft. Yes, I've received a large number of emails from local residents in relation to the first application that we're hearing this evening, predominantly in support of the application, but I have also received emails against the application, just to confirm I come to this meeting with an open mind.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Any other members? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Wilson, and I have received communications from residents about the first application, and both for and against, and I still have an open mind, of course. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wheeler, another one?
I have got another one, yes. I also had a telephone conversation with the applicant following the last committee meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, one of the members of the public speaking tonight is someone from the local Labour Party who I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations this evening? Okay, we'll go on to item 4, application number 250283, Castle Grove Nursery, Scotts Grove Road. Mr. Rahman, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to Castle Grove Nursery, Scotts Grove Road, reference 250283 OOU, and is being presented today as it is a major development. The proposal relates to outline planning permission for 15 dwellings, associated parking, landscaping and access following the demolition of existing buildings, with all matters reserved with only access considered. I refer members to the update sheet where additional representations of support have been submitted by residents setting out a preference for this proposal over the 30-unit development approved at last month's meeting. The applicant has also set out an additional sum of £57,500 to deliver highway improvements in the form of covered cycle parking in the main Chobham High Street car park, upgrades to the Grants Bridge footpath, and surface improvements to public footpaths in the village. As these enhancements have only been received this week, we have not had the opportunity to consult with the County Highway Authority on the need or deliverability of these improvements. Furthermore, officers are of the opinion that the contributions do not meet the tests for obligations, as they are not A, necessary to make the development acceptable, B, do not directly relate to the development, and also, given the location of the improvements and noting the scale of development, that they would not be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. In any instance, even if these contributions could be accepted, they would attract limited weight in favour of the development and would not, together with the other benefits of the proposal, outweigh the identified harm. The application site relates to a largely rectangular plot measuring 1.8 hectares in size on the northwestern side of Scottsgrove Road, outside of settlement boundaries within the Greenbelt. The site has an agricultural use, being used as a horticultural nursery, although operations since 2021 have dwindled down, and there are very limited staff on site remaining. The site is almost entirely hard-standing, with loose vegetation to the boundaries and various buildings which stand up to 5 metres in height. The site is not designated for any purpose outside of its Greenbelt designation. To the east, we have Grosvenor Road, which consists of detached single-family dwellings. To the west, there is a single dwelling adjoining the site, with another horticultural operation to the west of that, whilst to the opposite side of Scottsgrove Road, which falls within the jurisdiction of Woking Borough Council, are detached dwellings also. Again, as the site plan shows, the extent of building coverage on the site is extensive. The site benefits from a singular access point of Scottsgrove Road. The wider surrounding area of Scottsgrove Road is predominantly residential in character. This aerial photograph just gives a further idea of the scale of existing development on the site. Whilst there is tree coverage to the boundaries at present, the building can still be viewed from the public realm. These images show a view from the access into the site and the properties that sit directly opposite. This is the property adjacent to the west with the application site in the background of the picture, where the tops of the buildings can just about be glimpsed. This picture is from Grosvenor Road to the east, where some of the properties have rear gardens that share a boundary with the site. The buildings can be glimpsed from the street, as well as from the neighbouring windows and gardens. This gives an idea for the existing state of the buildings on site. These are quite dated structures which are in disrepair and don't contribute positively to the appearance of the surrounding area. To recap, the proposal is for outline planning permission with all matters aside from access reserved. The proposal is for 15 dwellings, all detached, together with 44 parking spaces on site. As the development is at outline stage, the final layout appearance, landscaping and scale of development would be subject to a reserved matters submission if granted. This plan shows the proposed access being created on the western corner of the site on Scottsgrove Road. The existing access will be closed off. Currently, there is no pedestrian footpath along the front of the site, which will be secured as part of this development, together with 2 crossing points on either end of the new footpath. In addition, the public right-of-way 7, which is in the southwest of the site, would be resurfaced and vegetation trimmed back to enhance the usability of this footpath. There would also be a £60,000 contribution towards the Surrey County Council Digital Demand Responsive Transport Service. This service is in lieu of improvements to the Hail and Ride bus stop service considered in historic applications. Relative to the grant of permission last month, these are the same improvements attached to that permission, bar a change in the financial contribution towards the DRT service, with that development securing a sum of £120,000 to be proportional to the increased number of dwellings. The proposal is supported by a parameter plan which sets out the maximum ridge heights of the development. The tallest part of the proposal would be to the centre of the development, with a lower height to the northern end, allowing a smoother transition with the open fields beyond. These plans show a view of the indicative site section within the centre of the site. The proposal is for a typical 2-storey dwellings of a traditional design, and the majority of dwellings benefiting from garages or carports. Here are some further illustrations of the indicative design, the detailed design of which will be considered at reserved matter stage should there be a grant of permission. Officers are recommending this application for refusal for the reasons set out in section 10 of the report. The site falls within the green belt and does not meet any of the exceptions set out in paragraphs 154 or 155 of the NPPF, whilst it also fails to meet the golden rules in paragraph 156. It would therefore be inappropriate development in the green belt, whilst resulting in harm to the openness of it. The proposed density of development would be significantly lower than that found in the surrounding area, at around 8 dwellings per hectare compared to the 15 to 18 dwellings per hectare established in the area. As a result, this development results in an inefficient use of the land. Paragraph 130 of the NPPF sets out that development should be refused where they fail to make an efficient use of land, particularly where there is a shortage of land to meet the housing needs, as demonstrated by the Council's inability to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The application also fails to provide a policy-compliant level of affordable housing on site. Instead, the applicant has agreed a contribution of £904,289, which is the surplus when taking into account the build cost and standard developer profit. The applicant has already demonstrated that a higher density scheme can be supported on site, as per the scheme granted last month, which was a policy-compliant development in all regards. The development was an exception to inappropriate development in the green belt, whilst meeting the golden rules, providing 50% affordable housing on site, and providing affordable housing tenure on site that is highly sought after. The density of development was at 16 dwellings per hectare, which corresponds with the density and form of development in the surrounding area. It provides the same highway improvement works in terms of the crossing facilities, the pedestrian footpath, the public right-of-way improvements, and the contribution to the DRT service. Furthermore, it would provide similar benefits in respect of ecology and biodiversity. It is therefore recommended that the application is refused on the basis of being an inefficient use of land, failing to maximise the potential of the site for housing delivery without justification. It would also result in inappropriate development within the greenbelt, failing to meet the golden rules and causing harm to its openness. The proposal also fails to provide a policy-compliant level of affordable housing on site without justification. And as the development is for refusal, a legal agreement in respect of securing the Thames Basin Heath SBA contributions has not been secured and also represents a reason for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. We have 2 speakers for this item. I'd like to call up Martin Broughton. Yes, please. Mr. Broughton, you have 4 minutes to make your point. Well, I welcome you back. And I got your name pronounced correctly this time as well, so that's quite good. You can just start whenever you wish. The Democratic Service will count you down until you only have a minute left.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, rather short notice. I'm trying to represent the views of what I'm pretty sure is the great majority of residents near the proposed development. I'm chair of the Scotsgrove Close Residents Association, and I've been copied on a lot of the large number of recent emails that have gone to Councillor Wheeler that she was mentioning. I'm sure you can confirm that they speak with a clear message. So they accept that the site needs redevelopment and that it's a mess at the moment. They understand that the committee needs to follow the new guidelines and that housing is a real national priority and that the choice is now between the 30 and the 15 dwelling plan. But they're horrified at the prospect of at least 60 more vehicles on that often jammed bit of road with dangerous junctions to the south and the east and a risky speed limit. I understand a lot of that is county responsibility, but the committee can help by not making it too much worse. And residents have reason to be worried about the impact on drainage and sewage provision, which seems to be chronically insecure. I've only been there 2 years, but I've heard a lot about that, all of which could be mitigated by accepting the 15-house plan. They would strongly prefer family housing on this site, as the surrounding roads all have family housing. Flats should go in the more suitable town centre locations where younger people want to live and work. The 30 plan obviously increases building density in the semi-rural setting, and 15 would be more in keeping with it. Many people are genuinely concerned about the impacts on wildlife and green space. The 15 development stands a chance of perhaps even improving those, the 30 much less so. They understand that the developers are offering the best part of £1 million towards affordable housing to be used in more suitable areas than a countryside bit of Chobham. It's far from clear that affordable housing for rent can be achieved in the 30 development, so they probably wouldn't understand why that seems to be a priority for the council. They also welcome the proposed contribution from the developers towards making pavements safer. Many of them have talked directly to the developers, who themselves want to do what the residents want them to do. The people where I live wrote making those points, and they asked me to make them because they believe that councillors should always have a responsibility to try and follow the wishes of their electorate where those can be balanced with their legal obligations. The 15 plan, as I understand it, is certainly legal. The overwhelming view from people most affected is that it should be the councillor's preferred option.
David Sporton. Just press your button.
You've still got 1 minute left, Chair. Oh, you've finished, okay.
You have a minute left if you wish to add anything to what you've said.
No, I'm fine with that, but I'm happy to take any question.
Members, do you have any questions of the Speaker? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Speaking. Mr. Broughton, in terms of one of the arguments by the officers is that the density of the previously approved housing is more in keeping with the existing area. Now, I know the area quite well, and I'm aware that if you take an aerial photograph to the right-hand side of the site and to the right-hand side of the development, the density of housing there is possibly similar with the 30 housing scheme. Could you please explain to other members of the committee that if you were to take an aerial photograph of the site and to the left-hand side of the site, what the density of housing is like in that area?
Well, I think the left-hand side is Scotsgrove Close, which is where I live. You're talking about Grosvenor Road, were you?
If you go further to the left of the site, so if you take Scotsgrove Close on the left, which obviously is there, but if you go, you can see that directly next door to it, there is a single house. I think that's also the house that had the unlawful development within it as well. So adjacent to the site, if we look at that image, the density of housing seems more in keeping with the lower density housing there, is the point that I'm trying to make. Whereas if you look to the right-hand side of the site, there's slightly more dense housing. I wonder if you could explain to me also what the houses are like in those two. I'm sure you know Grosvenor Road fairly well as well, in those two houses, in terms of the housing mix.
Yes, on the main road, they are quite spaced on that side. And then you've got another nursery, a kind of retail place there, which I think is vulnerable to similar development, and that would really clog things up if that ever came to pass. So what I suppose I was talking about in terms of the density is the overall feel of the area. So if you include, the glass houses, the nursery, and those more spaced ones on the main road, the 15 would be more in keeping with that overall proportion. The 30 then begins to swell it, I think, quite a lot.
Members, any other questions for the Speaker? Mr. Broughton, thank you very much for your time. Our next speaker for the application is Tom Rumble from Wolf Bond Planning. Mr. Rumble, if you can come up. welcome back also. Democratic Services will count you down for your 4 minutes. Whenever you're ready, will you please press the button on the device in front of you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, members. As you've heard, this application proposes the redevelopment of the site for 15 new homes. At the outset, it is noted that there are no objections to the scheme from any technical statutory consultee, and that this application is not applied for under the grey belt tests, and therefore the golden rules do not apply. The important point you need to assess tonight is whether this scheme, when compared to the site's current condition, demonstrates very special circumstances. Case law relating to which confirms that such circumstances can comprise a range of commonplace benefits that cumulatively enable the VSC test to be passed. With reference to section 77.8 of your officer's report, my judgment is that the VSC test is passed and the scheme's benefits are respectfully undervalued by your officer. 1, it offers a valuable contribution towards pressing needs, significant weight. 2, a guaranteed financial contribution of £904,000 towards affordable housing. This is predicated upon a viability position agreed with the Council's specialist advisors and benefits from significant weight. 3, the existing site and buildings are of an unsightly appearance. The scheme can resolve this. As evidence of this, the volume of built form on the site would reduce from over 54,000 cubic metres to only 12,000 cubic metres. The scheme offers a real opportunity for design and visual enhancement, significant weight. 4, a landscape-led development offering a huge increase in greenery commensurate with its greenbelt location. To put that into context, presently only 16% of this site forms green space. By comparison, circa 71% of the site would become green space. 47 new trees are indicated to be planted alongside native wildflower meadow and hedgerow planting. Significant weight. B&G provisions substantively exceeding 10%, outlined at a 44% gain in habitat units and 242% gain in hedgerows. Significant weight. 6, specific to this 15 dwelling scheme, the offer of targeted financial contributions towards Chobham Parish specific projects that could be secured through a resolution to grant. Significant weight. The scheme will result in a lower density development than the agreed 30 dwelling scheme. There will be an increased quantum of green and public open space, a yet more landscape-led development, and resulting reductions in traffic generation and pressure upon the drainage network.
1 minute left.
Further, it secures a prompt and deliverable approach towards affordable housing by way of financial contribution rather than the challenge of identifying registered providers. Importantly, the intention is a family-sized detached housing scheme wholly consistent with the prevailing vernacular found in this part of Chobham. You have heard that there is a clear and strong preference from the community for this application. In my experience, it is a rare occurrence that a community actively support any type of development proposal. Yet that is the circumstance that falls in front of you tonight. We urge you to acknowledge the scheme's specific, individual, substantial benefits and approve this application under very special circumstances consistent with your community's clear preference. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rumble. Members, do you have any questions of the Speaker? Councillor Victoria Wheeler, sorry. Anyone else have their hand up? I missed? Sorry. Councillor Quinn, would you?
I think Councillor Quinn was marginally before me, so if you'd like to go first.
Okay. Councillor Quinn and Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn speaking. I'm just wondering, can you, I don't know if you're speaking on behalf of the applicant, can you explain why they were not able to provide any affordable housing on this site as part of this application? Is there any reason? Thank you.
Yes, of course, thank you. So I'm agent to the applicant, so I'm speaking on their behalf. as planning consultant. Because this scheme is 15 dwellings, a relatively small quantum of development, there is a sound argument on a viability basis to mean that this can't provide a amount of affordable housing at the level of the 30 dwelling scheme. But what we submitted was a detailed viability costing exercise alongside the application. That was then peer reviewed by a consultant who looked at this on the council's behalf. And then it went through a second round of consultation with a carefully reviewed build cost plan. And the outcome of that is that in order to secure the established benchmark profit that you'd expect from a development, there is only a certain amount of funds available for affordable housing, albeit I'd say still a significant number at £904,000.
Councillor Quinn, do you ever got a second part to
Yeah,
that?
just a follow-up. I don't understand how it wouldn't be viable to make affordable housing on the site, given that it is affordable, or it is possible to give 900,000 in lieu. That shows that it's viable, doesn't it? Because that 900,000 could have instead been used to build affordable housing.
So, correct, it could be some kind of number of units on site, but that quantum would be very low. And really, within the context of such a low sort of on-site provision, the better approach and normal approach is to actually pay a financial contribution because of the issues of registered providers taking such a small amount of stock. So it was agreed that the approach best here would be effectively to give almost £1 million to the council's housing officers effectively to invest that in affordable housing projects within the borough.
Councillor Wheeler? Councillor
Thank you,
Garrett.
Chair. Councillor Wheeler, couple of questions. First and foremost, I have to say I personally love the dealing with the boundary in particular and the fact that it reduces the overlooking on the properties that are adjacent to this development. Out of interest, how long has the applicant actually owned this site? I've got another couple of questions after that, if I could have an answer to that first.
The honest answer to that, I do not know the answer to that.
But it's longer than 2 years, to the best of your knowledge?
Again, I don't know the answer to that. I certainly, all the time I've been involved in the project, they've owned it, which would be 9 to 12 months when this project came to my attention as planning consultant. But before that, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. My reason for asking that question is one of the things that have come out in both the neighbours that support this application and in your statement is that it's an improvement in the green belt because of the unsightly appearance. I am very painfully aware that the unsightly appearance has been allowed to get worse by allowing incursions, by not keeping up buildings, that sort of thing, and that's weighing very slightly on some of the comments that I made, because where we are is not the fault of the residents, it's the fault of the people that own the site, which was rented out for quite some period of time until the prospect of building on it rose its head. You talk about the £904,000 contribution to affordable housing. I don't suppose you know what affordable housing is available in Chobham at the moment. And you may not, in which case I will ask that question of the officers just to give them the heads up in terms of a waiting list in the Chobham area. Because one of the problems, and Councillor Quinn, this might be something that is quite interesting for you, is one of the problems that we have with the affordable housing that we already have in Chobham. We have a lot of it, and the most recent affordable housing has led to quite a bit of neighbourhood dispute, because with the best will in the world, not everybody wants to be in Chobham. Not something I can understand myself. It's, somewhere that owns my heart and soul. But actually living in Chobham is very expensive. There's nothing to do of an evening. Unless you want to spend sort of £10, £11 on a glass of wine, there's nowhere to go within Chobham. We're very limited with the amount of facilities that we have in the evening. I just wondered what what appetite you've had from housing authorities wanting to take on the affordable housing in Chobham, given some of the problems that the affordable housing in Chobham is already presenting?
So, in terms of the affordable housing stock in Chobham, which was kind of your first question, the honest answer is I don't know that. I don't know the locality well enough to answer that question. In terms of the potential for registered providers to take this site, the applicant has held engagement with registered providers since the previous committee, and there is potential that delivering on-site affordable housing may be challenging, but that's an ongoing process. We do feel as though this scheme has become overly compared to the 30 dwelling scheme and not considered appropriately on its merits. And the way I would read this case is that the scheme doesn't conform to the grey belt test because it doesn't offer the affordable housing provision in an on-site form. It's a financial form. But there are various routes that one can follow in the NPPF to get to an acceptable development in the green belt. One of those is grey belt. Another one, and a very sound one, is very special circumstances. And for a long time, that has been the operational policy and remains available. And this committee has supported schemes on VSC grounds on many occasions. The one that I'm most aware of is one I was involved with at Orchard Manor Care Home in Windlesham. No doubt most people here are aware of it. Now, I've set out certain case law points in my emails to members in advance of tonight, and I won't repeat that here because I appreciate any sake of brevity. But there's a well-established principle in planning, which is known as every case must be assessed on its individual merits. It's not a case of just because one compares to the 30 dwelling scheme. What you need to do is compare it to what the current situation is on the site. And that's a site that offers no beneficial housing, no beneficial employment opportunities, a set of buildings that have a poor appearance and detrimental impact upon the public realm, and a harmful impact upon the openness of the greenbelt, set against a package of strong benefits that cumulatively can be stacked up to come to the conclusion that this scheme, on its individual merits, can also be supported on VSC grounds and happens to chime with the FAR community preference for this scheme. So that's my judgment as a professional town planner.
My final question is in terms of the contribution to the SPA. I just wonder why this application didn't include a contribution to the SPA, given that it's very well established within this area.
It would do, it's just when it's recommended for refusal, we're not invited to then make that contribution. So if you resolve to approve this, you just resolve subject to those contributions being paid and secured through 106.
Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually realised my questions are for the officers, so I will hold them until we get to speaking to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clowett.
Yep. I just wondered why this proposal wasn't put in first, or why it wasn't the one that we had originally. Why we've suddenly got this a month later.
They were put in at the same time. Your officer determined to bring this one to committee after the first one. That's something we can't control.
Right, thank you for that. And also, if this one is refused, will the previous one go ahead? Do we know?
It will proceed to get planning permission, and the intention would be yes. So the opportunity would be lost for the residents to have this 15 dwelling scheme.
But would you then revert to going to the 30 scheme, or don't you know?
The developer that controls this land wants to bring forward a development proposal. They don't want the site to remain as is. That would be their only development option.
Members, do you have any other questions? Mr. Rumble, do you mind me if I ask you one? Can you tell me what the benchmark profit percentage is that you use to calculate not putting social housing on the site?
The benchmark profit level will be 17.5% on gross development value. That is an established benchmark across national planning practice guidance and used across the country.
That brings your offer of cash to the council up to over £1.1 million. Could you not have used that to build any sociable housing or lower cost housing on that site? That seems to be like, I've never built a house, I don't know how much they cost, but bordering 1.2 million seems quite a bit.
Well, the contribution would be 904,000, not 1.2 million.
Yeah, but if we put your margin on top of that as to what it would represent in real world, then it brings it up to one.
So the reality is the amount of stock on site that would be facilitated through that £900,000 would be pretty modest. The likelihood of an RP taking such a small number is very low. So typically in these circumstances, it's better that the money is actually given to the borough council to spend on affordable housing projects. If you were to take the profit as well, then there'd be no incentive for the developer to actually bring forward the development. That's why there's always a profit baked into any development appraisal.
I don't have an issue with the profit. I'm just trying to ascertain as to why you're not building those sociable houses. As I said, it's 1.1 million pounds. How many units could that build?
The honest answer, I wouldn't know exactly the number because I'm not a surveyor or a sort of development appraisal specialist, but it would be a relatively small amount of stock. It would be sort of 3 or 4, say it's 3 or 4 units, I don't know. Then the likelihood of finding a registered provider to then take that stock is quite unlikely because it's such a small amount, because the RPs tend to prefer 20 plus unit sites. So it's better provided, in my judgment, as a financial contribution to the borough council to spend on wider affordable housing projects.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any further questions? Thank you for your time, Mr. Rumble. Members, do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Quinn first, Councillor Garrett next.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn speaking. I'm wondering if the officers agree with me that if we decided to accept this application tonight, to vote for it, it would be setting a very dangerous precedent. And that would be that developers can pay their way to get rid of their affordable housing contributions. And the reason why the affordable housing rules exist is because we want integrated communities. We don't want a segregated Surrey Heath where the affordable and social housing is just built in Camberley, and in Chobham and Windlesham, developers can pay to get out of their affordable housing contributions. So I'm wondering if the officers agree with me on that. And the planning guidance is very clear, isn't it? That you have to have a justification for not having affordable housing on your site, and just being able to pay money is not a good enough justification to not meet policy compliant levels. Thank you.
So certainly in terms of the scheme, which was the 30 dwellings, that was in compliance with central government. It's not just guidance anymore, it's what central governments are saying. And actually our adopted policy as well talks about delivering affordable housing on site. There are, of course, many forms of affordable housing which tick that box. You don't necessarily need to have a registered provider. It could be discount market sale house. It's still ticking the box in terms of an affordable house on that site. So just to provide a financial contribution without the evidence behind that and without backing it up does provide, certainly in terms of the benefit that you're adding to that, what the applicants described as a VSC, a very special circumstance, it means you have to give less weight to it when we know that there's very many forms of affordable housing which could potentially be delivered on the site.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. So it won't come as any surprise that my question is about affordable housing as well. So I've been doing this for 6 years now, and I could be corrected, and I'm sure Councillor Wheeler will correct me if I'm wrong. I don't ever remember hearing this come forward before. So this is a first for me, although apparently this is something that happens. I have a massive issue with not putting affordable housing in. I've said this in the chamber on a number of occasions. I am not going to change that now. 20% I think is our figure, I think, if memory serves me, 20% minimum. So 40, okay, so it's 40%. So that's 40% of 15. So we're talking, what, about 4 or 5 units? 6 units. Thank you very much for the quick maths. 6 units. Okay, so, and we've also seen in this chamber on a number of occasions that that figure has gone down. So it could be 2 units, could be 3 units. My issue is we need affordable housing. Because I've never come across this before, I've got questions. So this £904,000, where's it going to go? Does this have to happen in Chobham? Does it happen somewhere in Surrey Heath? Who controls where it goes? Who controls how many houses? Because that £904,000, who calculates how many houses we can have for our £904,000? What is that figure based on? Because this is information I need to know, because this is the first time I've ever heard about this. Thank you.
Well, the 904,000 is effectively what they've got left after they've taken out everything else in terms of their bill costs, in terms of their developer profit, etc. One of the points in the report is that we don't have the evidence where that would go. We don't understand where the 904,000 would go. The reality is it would go into a central pot, which housing would use. It wouldn't necessarily be in Chobham, but we don't have that detail as to actually if that could feasibly be used as well.
So if I could have a follow-up, is there a policy somewhere that tells what, because as I say, I've never seen this, so is there a policy somewhere that says how this should be dealt with? Because I think it sounds like we're in an area where not many of us have ever been before.
I mean, we have our current adopted policy, which talks about affordable housing on site in the first instance. Then it talks about subject to viability if you can't deliver it on site. But then that still needs to be tested. We still need to understand where that money is going to be utilised. Otherwise, what are we going to do with it?
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is about a different precedent. It's because we know about all the changes that have happened in the recent NPPF about lack of protection for the green belt. So, and this committee recently ruled that simply providing more market homes is not a very special circumstance. That was the Snows Ride, and that failed the golden rules, so it needed very special circumstances, and we didn't rule that providing market homes at Snows Ride was very special circumstances, and there's been no appeal yet for that. I mean, I think we've got another couple of weeks. So that seemed quite clear to me that if we're going to give up the green belt, we should at least get the grey belt benefits from the 3 golden rules, which includes affordable homes, which would be 50% for C3. So I'm just wondering, does this then make it a precedent that in future we will accept more market homes as very special circumstances? I hope that makes sense.
I think as set out in the report, when we consider each of the very special circumstances presented by the applicant, we've given them to a large degree limited weight for that very reason.
Thanks, that's understood. So, so then, just so I've got this straight, so if we did approve this against the officer's recommendations, then we'd be setting a precedent that other developers in the green belt, which is all available for grey belt, but this we wouldn't even get the grey belt benefits. Other developers could come along with low density, unaffordable homes, and claim that's very special circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. You'd be consistently, yes, whilst you'd be considering your own very special circumstances and the own merits of that proposal, you would be consistently, in effect, going against national policy, which is to deliver only to release the green belt if you're meeting the golden rules. So in this particular instance, it means 50% affordable homes on a site. We know that there's a scheme which delivers 50% affordable homes on this site, which is the previous application. Whilst you have to consider each proposal on its own merits, one of the material considerations is previous decisions and previous appeals. Now we know that there's a scheme which ticks the boxes, it meets affordable housing and everything else. So yes, we have to be very careful, because actually in the first instance, we need to look at what national policy says. National policy says it's inappropriate development within the green belt, which we know is a big test, inappropriateness in the green belt, and it's only released if actually you tick those boxes in terms of golden rules, which is given a lot of weight. Otherwise, you would end in the VSC arguments. But as Naval's already said, Mr. Rahman's already said, it's on its own merits, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to then give a green light to every market housing that comes forward.
Thanks. So in this case, if we were to approve it, we'd be going against national policy and we'd be going against adopted local policy as well on the green belt.
Any other members? Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you. We don't have a great history in this borough of actually achieving the affordable housing that we've agreed to in our development. I've sat through lots of planning applications, and I think the Mindenhurst development is a point in case whereby we had a much larger percentage of affordable housing that then was not delivered. So I suppose at the back of my mind, I am concerned that the very special circumstances for the previous application, and I know, and I'll come on to that in a minute, may not actually be realised anyway, just on the basis of affordability. I'm also concerned, and certainly from the developer I have heard, that they're yet to secure a housing authority to take on those affordable homes and the affordable rented homes, which means worst case scenario, it's going to come back and it's going to go to affordable housing. And as we all know, the term affordable housing is a waste of time because it's 20% off market value. And given the market value of the houses in the immediate area, you would have to be on an incredibly high salary to afford a 20% reduction in market value. So that's where we stand. So given that there has been an awful lot of talk about the fact that we already have a development that's been approved on that site, I think we do need to bear in mind that all we've approved on that site is 30 houses. 50% are meant to be affordable, a percentage of those is meant to be affordable, rented. They're yet to find a housing authority to take that on, and all of those could then come back as affordable housing, which is 20% below market value, which, as we all know, is a waste of time. To Councillor Quinn's point about piecemeal development and development across the whole piece, I'm not sure how familiar Councillor Quinn is with Chobham, but Chobham has a very large amount of affordable housing, and we have a lot of very poor housing stock with people in very desperate circumstances. And the last major development that we had in Chobham had a large percentage of affordable housing, which is the one that I referred to when I said that people are really unhappy there because there is boggle to do in Chobham if you're a young person with a family. So those are the things that are weighing really heavily on my mind. My preference for this site is that it would go back to greenhouses. We have a developer that wants to develop the site, that's allowed the site to quite callously, some may feel, fall into disrepair, which is why the residents are now supporting this application. They didn't support the 40 housing application. There was a big hearing, and I'm also slightly distressed by the use of the reduction in built form. What we have on there at the moment is greenhouses, which we can see through, which are appropriate development within the green belt. And what we're planning here is housing, which at the bottom line is not appropriate development in the housing in the green belt at all. So to my mind, what I'm weighing up is the worst of two evils, and whether if the developer decides not to go ahead with the 30 development housing scheme, if they go to appeal, given that we don't have our 5-year housing supply, are we absolutely confident that we would lose that appeal? And that's the advice that I'm looking for from the officers. So a question around that, forget the 30 housing development. If the developer takes us to appeal on this 15 housing development, are we absolutely confident that we'd win it, given that we don't have a 5-year housing supply? So that's question number one. Question number two is what people do we have on the waiting list that have Chobham down as their preference for somewhere to live on the affordable rented housing register? And question number three is what happens if they cannot find a housing authority to take on that affordable rented? Thank you.
To answer your question about confident on appeal, yes, because we wouldn't be recommending this. We are confident. We're confident for a number of reasons, which Mr. Rahman said at the beginning of his presentation tonight. One of the things was he spoke about the MPPF and the inefficient use of the land. This would be inefficient use of the land. It's wholly contrary to what the MPPF is pushing for. And when you release greenbelt land, that's the MPPF expects you then to make proper utilisation of that land. That's not going to occur at the moment. Secondly, the government's approach is quite clear in terms of what is appropriate and what is inappropriate development within the greenbelt. At the moment, this is inappropriate because it doesn't meet the golden rules. It's quite clear on that. Now, in terms of the arguments then of VSC, your arguments of VSC become more weak because of the fact that you're going against the MPPF and the benefits, many of the benefits which were listed by the agents are benefits which you would expect with any proposal in any event, in terms of the open space, in terms of BNG, that's biodiversity net gain. So they're not somehow creating those as part of this development. It's what we would expect in any event. So you've got to look beyond what are the benefits which would come with any proposal and what is really substantial with this to make a difference, to tip that balance against that inappropriateness. And at the moment, there's simply not enough to tip that balance.
I was just going to come in your other questions, Kieran Bartlett. In terms of the waiting list, I don't have the specific figures from our housing team, but what I can say is from our local housing needs assessment 2024, which informs the local plan, there is an acute need for social and affordable housing across the borough. And if it would be helpful, I can also provide census data in terms of the affordable housing stock in Chobham. And in terms of the registered provider point, that does not apply to this application in any event because we are considering the 15-unit scheme. And if the other scheme were not to be meeting the 50% affordable housing, it wouldn't be meeting the golden rules. But that's beyond the scope of what it's discussing.
Sorry, and just one further follow-up. The 40 housing development was recommended for approval straight off, even though it was greenbelt last time by the officers. I wonder what's so different about this 15 housing development, whereby the officers are no longer recommending it for approval.
Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken about the density, but in terms of greenbelt terms, as you know, that appeal decision back in 2018, 2019, the inspector was quite clear, inappropriate development, and took that approach. So actually, in terms of the basic principles, in terms of what you apply in terms of greenbelt policy, it's not changed. This is inappropriate development. With the other application, we don't need to even look at with the 30 dwelling scheme because it's appropriate. So you don't actually even need to consider the harm to the greenbelt because it's automatically appropriate. This is inappropriate, so therefore you need to consider that harm to openness, which is what Mr. Rahman's report does.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just a couple of things to clarify. Councillor Wheeler said earlier that there were very special circumstances for the 30 unit scheme, but that wasn't necessary because it's appropriate development. This one is inappropriate, so it requires very special circumstances, just to clear that up. But also the point about socially mixed communities, that's government policy and it's in our local adopted policy. You can't just say Chobham's too middle class, so we can't have any affordable homes, or Windlesham's too middle class, so we can't have any affordable homes. That goes completely against, well, all adopted policy and common sense as well, because we want to have socially mixed communities. So I just wanted to clarify that would be just saying we can't have affordable homes in a certain area would be completely challengeable as well.
Can I just come back on that? I was not saying that. That wasn't what I was saying. What I was saying is there's not a high demand in Chobham. Lots of the families that come to Chobham are really unhappy in Chobham because of what is there and what isn't there. You know, so, and I'm not for a moment saying that Chobham shouldn't have affordable rented housing. It's what we need. It would work really, really well. What I am saying, though, is that affordable housing in Chobham is not affordable.
Just to point out, the 30 homes application did specify the tenure mix, and it included quite a lot of social rented.
Councillors, thank you very much. I think we get the idea. Do we have any other questions? I have a final question for the officers to do with the commuted affordable housing sum. Is that guaranteed?
Well, I mean, it would have to be on, as if members agreed this proposal, you'd have to have a legal agreement to secure that money. And then you would, obviously that legal agreement, the applicant would be bound by the terms of that legal agreement because it forms part of the decision in effect.
Thank you. Members, if there's no further questions, the officers have recommended is to refuse this application. I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, Councillor Quinn. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Garrett.
Okay, all those for the officer's recommendation to refuse, please raise your hand. So when I say your name, please put your hand down. So that's Councillor Sean Garrett, Councillor Mary Glowett, Councillor Dave Hoff, Councillor Jonathan Quinn, Councillor David O'Mahony, Councillor Kevin Thompson, Councillor David Whitcroft, Councillor Helen Whitcroft, and Councillor Richard Wilson. All those against the officer's recommendation to refuse. Councillor Victoria Wheeler and Councillor Valerie White. Any abstentions? No abstentions.
The application has been refused. Members of the public, if you've finished your time here, if you could leave quietly and orderly. Member of the public again, please. Now that Councillor Wilson's fan club has left. Item 5. Item 5, application number 250814, 84 to 100 Park Street, Camberley, Surrey. And Mr. Carty, if you could make the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal relates to a 61 sheltered apartment development as approved under permission 180613 granted on appeal. The current proposal seeks to amend the parking layout as a minor material amendment to the development, reducing the level of parking from 61 to 49 spaces to serve the development. There are other minor changes which will be addressed later in the presentation, but members need to bear in mind not just the original appeal decision for this development, but also the earlier non-material amendment approvals as set out in the officer report. There are no updates, and I'll lead you through the plans and photos. The site location or plan on the left-hand side of the slide is on the left-hand side of the slide. The site is located in the town centre of Camberley on the west side of Park Street. I can't get the cursor. And north of the rail line. The right-hand side of the slide shows an aerial photo of the site and its surroundings with the existing buildings. Furwood Court and Furwood Drive properties lie to the rear. Large retirement and care home premises lie opposite the site to the east. The shops and main square car park, as well as the railway station, are close by. This is the site frontage onto Park Street. The buildings are now vacant and hoarding provided around the site. These are photos from the rear of the site, with the top right photo looking towards the rear of these properties, and the bottom left photo looking towards the rear boundary, with forward courts just visible to the right over the fence. The left-hand image is the approved layout, with the current proposal on the right showing the reduced parking, particularly to the top right of this image. The car park would be reduced from 61 to 49 spaces. The proposal would reposition an electricity substation so that it is located to the site entrance off the service road, instead of the southwest corner adjacent to the railway line boundary, where it is now proposed to provide cycle storage. A backup generator would be provided close to the rear boundary of the site. The reduced car park has provided further soft landscaping to provide a larger garden area for future residents. Other changes include reductions in the width and depth of the building by about 0.2 metres in both directions. The mix of 1 and 2 bed units is amended with more 1 bed units and no change in the overall number of flats. This change is shown in the table within paragraph 4.3 of the officer report, and amendments to the ground floor layout. A comparison of the originally approved scheme, current proposal, and these non-material amendment approvals is set out in the table within paragraph 4.5 of the officer report. This slide compares the approved ground floor layout on the left and the proposed ground floor layout on the right. These include the provision of a larger residence lounge and rationalised multi-purpose room and kitchen area, along with the relocation of the wellness suite and an addition of a guest suite. This slide shows the changes to the front elevation between the approved and proposed schemes. There are relatively minor changes here, much of, if not all of which, could have been dealt with through a non-material amendments proposal. The one clear difference is that the balustrade to the roof level balcony area has, on the approved scheme, a glazed area, and that's been taken out, and the balustrade risen on the current scheme. And that's just for just the similar approved on the left and proposed on the right, to show you those differences for the south elevation facing the railway line. This application is a replacement for the original plan permission. The conditions proposed for this application reflect the original permission, and proposed changes along with the states of the condition details previously agreed, and on the basis that the development has already commenced. With the development under this permission, including demolition works, and with some demolition works already undertaken, the original permission remains extant as agreed under the Lawful Development Certificate 230367. The original legal agreement for this sheltered housing development remains in place because there is a clause in the agreement to include any subsequent Section 73 applications, such as this variation of condition application. The agreement relates to a minimum age for future residents of 55 years, an affordable housing contribution and a SAM contribution. The principal issue relates to the reduction in car parking. It is considered that the proposed car parking ratio of 0.8 spaces per unit is acceptable in this highly sustainable location, and changes to the parking layout, which are all fully supported by the County Highway Authority. The application proposal is therefore supported with a recommendation to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carty. Members, do you have any... Actually, I'll just stop there. I'm running ahead of myself. Members, we have a speaker on this application. Can I call up Mr. Tim Spencer, the agent? Welcome to the chambers, Mr. Mr. Spencer. You have 4 minutes to speak. The device in front of you, when you press the button, you can start when you're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. My name is Tim Spencer. I'm the head of planning at Pegasus Homes. We're the applicant in this matter. Pegasus is a developer of retirement accommodation for people in their later lives. We've developed 40 unique developments around the country, predominantly in the southeast. Permission was granted at appeal in 2020 following a refusal against the recommendation of officers by your predecessor planning committee. The planning committee minutes reflect that one of the reasons for the refusal was the lack of green external amenity space. We've reflected on this matter and we're concerned that the external spaces are not working as they should and underprovide external garden amenity space while parking is surplus to requirements. We've gathered evidence from a number of our developments locally, Sandhurst, Crowthorne, Wokingham and Bourne End, and we've determined that the parking demand is around 1 parking space per 1.25 apartments or 0.8 spaces per apartment. By way of comparison, there's a retirement development opposite the site in Park Lane that provides parking on the basis of 1 space for 3 apartments. So there's 61 apartments and 20 parking spaces. So we're well in excess of that. To us, though, the real benefits of these changes is a significant increase in the amount of green space provided for our residents and also creating opportunities for biodiversity enhancements. We focused the updated landscaping proposals on planting to support ecology, such as species of rich flowering, lawn, diverse native shrub planting and native hedge planting. We've got things like dogwood, hazel, wild privet, blackthorn, and they'll support bird life and small animals, provide nesting opportunities as well as food in the autumn. A greener site also has climate change benefits, reducing both the heat island effect and capturing CO2. The development is now lawfully commenced. Since the granting of planning permission, several non-material amendments have been permitted, generally required by the ever-changing building regulations. The windows failed the new Part O regulations, so that meant the elevations had to change, windows slightly smaller, repositioned. More recent changes to the fire regulations have meant that we now need a standby generator on site to power the fire safety equipment, such as the lifts and the sprinklers, which we've included throughout the entire building. We've also had to change the ground floor area to include a larger sprinkler tank. We've updated the mix of accommodation to provide more one-bedroom accommodation, more one-bedroom apartments. This is because most retirement accommodation is occupied by single occupants and they prefer to have a smaller, more affordable and more manageable apartment. We've included a second guest suite. Our residents generally prefer the affordability of a one-bed apartment with access to a guest suite for visitors. So there are, lost the figures at my disposal, but we've got 27, we've changed 27 to 31 one-beds and 34 to 26 two-beds. So there's still a mix of accommodation.
1 minute left.
Thank you. In overall size terms, the building has shrunk very slightly. The heights remained the same as consented. There's a slight reduction in the width and the depth of the building. So in overall terms, our requested amendments are very positive. Large increase in external amenity space, more biodiverse planting, a modest reduction in the scale of the building, improved fire safety, enhanced communal spaces internally and externally, and overall the more efficient use of the site. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for considering our application. Bearing in mind the notable benefits of the application, there being no policy conflicts and no adverse effects, we would please request that you kindly consider favourably this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Members, do you have any questions of the Speaker? Councillor Garrett, then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. So you mentioned other similar establishments close by and within other areas. Were the stats based on a minimum age of 55? And you mentioned retirement at the age of 55 a number of times. I'm only 56, and I'm not looking to retire anytime soon. So I'm interested that this is being aimed and mentioned of retirement and minimum 55, because if they're minimum 55 and you get people moving in, I'm just wondering how the 1 2-bedroom, 1 car works. Now, I know we hear in this chamber on a number of occasions it's because there's local facilities, there's trains, there's buses, but we all live in the real world and that's not actually what happens. So my concern is that we're going to be low on parking spaces. If they have visitors, where are the visitors going to park? I know there's the square car park, but we've just leased out the top 2 car parking levels at the square car park, which means we're already going to be having less space there. So it's all around parking, and I do just need to get an idea of, are these figures that you're giving us based on similar places with 55 as a minimum, etc.?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I suppose the short answer is yes. The comparable developments are all age restricted in a similar fashion. The 55-year age restriction, that's straight out of planning practice guidance, which stipulates that retirement accommodation sort of starts at that threshold. The average age of our resident is well north of 55. I'm only 6 years off from 55 myself, so I wouldn't see myself living in one of these developments in the short term. So our average age is in the region of 80, generally a single female, and most of our residents initially come in with the idea of bringing their own car. Certainly not all, but in the 80% range. And we see that car ownership drops over time as people realize we prefer to make use of public transport and Uber, car sharing. Some people move into our developments without a car, but they would like a space so that visitors can come and stay. And we just find that over time that mix stabilizes probably below 0.8. We're also doing more of a rental approach to retirement, and we're seeing that the rental demand for parking is sitting at about 0.6. So far lower as people move in on the basis of rental. So I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. So as you said, this was first approved on appeal in 2020 from an application in 2018. So I was just kind of wondering, why is it not built yet? I know it's technically started because there's been some demolitions, but the building hasn't really started. What's the reason behind that?
The reason is really bad timing. We received an approval a little bit later than we would have hoped, and at the time that the permission came through, we were in the midst of a global pandemic, and that was particularly hard on retirement accommodation. People were simply not willing to make a move into retirement accommodation while there was a pandemic. We don't deliver care home accommodation, so this is self-contained apartments. But there was a lot of there were some really horrendous things happening in care homes, and significant numbers of deaths, and that suppressed retirement accommodation generally across the market. That's taken a long time to recover. We've also had the double whammy of massive build cost inflation on the back of Brexit. So the timing was just apt. We couldn't have timed it any worse if we tried. We're really keen to get going now, and the market's recovered to the point that we feel that there's confidence to build and sell.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Wheeler after.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson speaking. So you touched on it, so I just want to clarify exactly how the parking spaces are allocated. Are they allocated, so would the person moving in have the option to purchase a parking space with their property? Is the answer to that yes first, or is it a free-for-all situation?
Not a free-for-all. The development is intended to be for rental purposes, so they would rent a parking space with their apartment. That would be an allocated space. And can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
That's okay. We have the ability to control parking. So what we won't do is we won't allow more residents with cars to live in the scheme than we've got parking to provide. So we'll absolutely control that.
So funnily enough, I actually live, I'm way too young. I look as young as you and I'm the same age as you. Way too young to be in this kind of property, but funnily enough, at the moment, for another few weeks at least, I am actually living in quite a large density rental block, which is quite similar to this, and I was quite surprised how low the take-up of parking is. So that I was supposed to pay for mine, and they threw it in because there's just such little demand. So it was a surprise to me. So it does happen that not everyone in a town centre location does want to drive. What concerns me more, though, is visitor parking. I would imagine, whilst you're probably absolutely right that the average tenant isn't necessarily driving, there will have family visiting regularly, I would think. And is there any visitor parking, or literally will it be sort of horse trading between the residents to say, oh, you can use my space on a Saturday when your mum comes? And I'm just interested to the dynamic of how that works. And I appreciate this is not a planning consideration, but I think it does help to shape the view of this application.
What we generally do is we reserve a number of spaces. We've got on-site staff as well, so we'd have a space for staff, and then we'd probably reserve, I would say, in the region of 6 spaces on the development for visitors, and we'd manage that and monitor it as it sort of ebbs and flows over time. I hope many people do visit. It's sadly not our experience as people retire.
Councillor Wheeler, did you have a question?
I'm so depressed now, I don't think I can bear to answer it, quite honestly.
Come and live in one of our developments.
It's goodness me, you know, I'm way over. I'm at the maximum minimum age, so, you know. Yes, I was quite cheerful when I came to Planning Committee this evening. I suppose I've got 2 things that I would like to urge. One is that you consider a carpool scheme with a designated parking space for a carpool scheme, not something we can legislate. The other point, I'm not sure whether or not we can legislate, that we do actually say there has to be a minimum of 4 spaces reserved for visitor car parking at any one time, because theoretically this could go ahead and every single space could be leased out. Now, I'm looking to you for a nominal, yeah, that doesn't sound too unreasonable, and I'm looking to the officers as to whether or not that's a reasonable condition. And I think we have to go to the vote as to whether or not that's a reasonable condition or something now as well, don't we, since recent changes. But so there we go. Carpool one, just one for you to park. Are you open to us having a minimum number of visitor spaces?
With my sort of practical hat on, I'd say yes. With my planning hat on, I'd say that condition, because it doesn't exist in the extant permission, it might be difficult to shoehorn it in. We would retain a number of spaces for operational purposes. Designating them may be difficult because things would move around as people select their parking spaces. But you know, as a principle, I think we'd be okay with it. But whether it's sort of legally sound, I'm not sure.
Councillor Garrett?
Just following up on those points. So the 49, I can't, 47, I can't remember what it was, the number of parking spaces. So how many will be for staff and how many will be for the other things? So what will be left for the residents? Just so I've got an idea.
Off the top of my head, we'd have one parking space for the staff, so that's pretty simple, leaving 48 below. We'd then reserve somewhere between probably 4 and 6 for visitors, so that would be 42 remaining for residents.
So what does that take the number down to?
Probably, maths off the top of my head, 75%.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Very quick. If you don't get the take-up from the 42 remaining residents, do the other ones automatically just become floating visitor spaces until they're taken up?
Yep, that would be the case, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Lowett?
And you have one sort of like a warden, don't you? And then there will be carers going and there will be cleaners. So would they be parking the visitor spaces or the guest spaces? I mean, some of them would presumably might not drive, but, you know, there will be some that might have to drive.
Yeah, we manage our own cleaning within the building, so we provide those services. We'd manage that parking. We'd have service bays, which the attending cleaning staff could use. Generally, our residents it's a C3 retirement scheme, not C2, so there's no requirement for the provision of care, and most of our residents are independent, but there will be instances where care is required. My parents lived in a similar facility, and their carers came in. What we try to do is facilitate the care through a local domiciliary care provider. So most of our schemes, the carers will walk in from a town centre office. That's how I imagine this would operate.
Members, do you have any other questions? Councillor Wheeler?
What, any more questions for the Speaker?
No, I wanted to clarify. You used the word earlier, condition. Was that a condition you want?
Well,
or requesting
I'll wait until we can let the Speaker go, but I'll just ask the officers as to whether or not it's a reasonable condition that might be enforceable, or whether, to the applicant's point, given that this is a reduction in car parking spaces and it wasn't there before, that boat has sailed, which is probably where I think you're going to end up, but the Speaker can go prior to that.
In terms of the condition, it's not necessary. And we have to think about imposition of conditions. Do they meet the tests of imposing conditions? Well, in this particular case, you're in the town centre, highly sustainable location in any event. There is alternative parking close by, so it would be wholly unnecessary. And
I have to say, it's not going to be a surprise to any of the officers that the fact this gives extra green space swells my heart.
Mr. Spencer, thank you very much for your time. Members, do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, Councillor Quinn speaking. It's more for context for members as well as a question for officers. My personal view is that this is quite a good, sustainable town centre location for public transport. I mean, the train station is very close by, and it's in the town centre, so there's a lot of services that can be accessed by foot, even for those who are more elderly. Just a bit of context, and also I'm wondering if this is a factor we can consider as well. Being in my ward, I know kind of Furwood Drive, Franceville Drive nearby, they do have a lot of parking control, so they do have all double yellow lines, and permit holders only. So I don't think there will be a lot of overflow parking on those streets. Obviously, that's down to County Council for enforcement. But I'm just wondering if that's something we should be considering as well when we're thinking about where it might be lead to more problem on those other residential roads. Thank you.
I think that's right. Is that but that's certainly the view of the Highway Authority, that because of the controls on parking in this area mean that you're less likely to get the on-street parking, and that there is those facilities nearby that people, if they were to have a longer stop, meeting family there for an hour or so, or maybe longer, or take them to one of the restaurants in town or whatever, then they will probably use the town square car park in any case. It sounds like it would be well policed, so that people don't abuse it. In any case, just followed up from what Mr. Partington said earlier, the Park Lane scheme, the Churchill Living, it is a 0.3 spaces per unit. Even I had a quick look through some of the sort of sheltered housing schemes around the Derrick Horn Court, which is 400 metres from the town centre. It has a ratio of about 0.6. This is still higher than that at 0.8. I appreciate standards over time to change, but the Park Lane scheme is a fairly recent scheme as well. So I think that with that, I think that people will be pushed into using the public car parks.
Members, any other questions? Councillor Wheeler?
I've got Councillor Whitcroft beside me sighing. But
I wonder why.
I just wondered whether or not we do now meet the minimum space standards. My assumption is it's slightly different if it's because it's not really a care home, is it? So is it considered as flats or is it considered as residential living? So that's question number one. Question number two, really applaud the fact there's additional green space that has come with this, particularly, the applicant reminded us of the impact of COVID and people sharing. My very vivid memory is somebody sharing a piece of pavement outside their flat in Chobham, which didn't have any amenity space whatsoever, so the only place they could sit on the pavement, and the pavement wasn't wide enough for people to walk 3 foot to get around them. So I'm very pleased that this is here, and actually from a council point of view it's a win-win situation, because if they do have loads of visitors, our parking figures might go up a bit.
If you'll talk about the minimum housing standards for unit size, they are all in excess of it, even with the changes, so they are in excess. I
thank
did very quickly note down the, very, very broadly, I just did a quick calculation on the back of a cigarette packet this afternoon, but I think that the amenity area has moved from 1,500 square metres to 1,850, so it's a fair proportionate increase. Thank you.
Members, do you have any other questions for this application of the officers? In that case, the officer's recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Wheeler. I think Councillor Quinn was the seconder.
Okay, all those who are for the officer's recommendation to grant subject to conditions, please raise your hand. That looks unanimous. Thank you.
The application has been granted subject to conditions. Thank you very much, members. Have a lovely chilly evening.